What's going on? It's Brandon from Vegas. Welcome back to Won't You Be My Neighbor? And today we have a special episode for you. We have Gen Z versus Gen X versus Millennials versus Boomers in real estate. Each generation is represented, and they're going to put their cause of why real estate has a huge pro and a huge con based on their generation. And since they are the whiniest of generations, let's start with them. We've got Gen Z here, represented by Austin. Gen Z is the people born between 1997 and 2012, typically between the ages of 12 and 27, though they all act like they're 12, not 27. Millennials are between 1981 and 1996. They are represented by the lovely Alexandra and your arbiter, Brandon from Vegas. They are between 28 and 43, and they are the great middle children of history. Next, we have Gen X, represented by Robert. They are people born between 1965 and 1980. They are between usually about 43 to 59. And finally, we have our Boomers.
Yes.
And here to put the boo in Boomers, that is your co-host, Mr. Bill Gaylord.
You guys are jealous. This is complete
I
jealousy.
am jealous. Yeah, no, that's why we're here.
They are born between the ages of 59 and 78, and we are going to rip them a new one. So let's get started. Austin, as
Hi.
the whiniest generation representing Gen Z, what is your current biggest issues with real estate?
My current biggest issue with real estate is just the cost to get in terms of price of house to income ratio. So, for example, I make above the median average of the United States, and I still can't even afford a house. I can't even afford an awful condo over on D Street. Like, that's still out of my price range.
Okay.
Austin, you're freaking 27 years old.
Right.
The average first-time home buyer is 34. So what are
Right
you
now,
complaining
but
about?
in your generation, hold on,
Yeah,
hold on, I got that
it
stat.
wasn't
Hold on,
for your
hold on.
generation.
We're gonna,
Wow, Bill's coming out
We come with
swinging.
stats.
But, gotta put it out there.
gotcha. Let me find. I have multiple tabs.
And they've been coddled.
They have.
They've been coddled, and the way that it's been set up is you don't need to move out or you can't afford to move out, and we're going to keep you at home.
Yeah, I don't want to live with my parents though. It's awful. It's actually like I'd much rather, personally speaking, I'd much rather live on the street.
Yeah, but you're 26, so so why are you trying to buy a home right now?
Because I do have a family and I want to be able to provide for them. Also, nobody here can disagree. It's arguably the best thing you can do in terms of an investment.
Yes.
And so I would like to get into that before it's too late. And houses that were once $100,000 are now $800,000.
And so you're actively trying to buy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was a few months ago. We're on hold at the moment, but I'm still actively saving, so actively trying to get my income up even higher than it is now, which it's still like, it's already pretty high in comparison to most people in my generation, and it's still like, I'm still fighting a very uphill battle.
Sure. What you guys are suffering from a lot, and unfortunately you guys don't like to think about this or vote like this, what you guys are suffering from is a population increase, right?
Right, a significant increase.
During the boomer generation, which we're going to rip to shreds in a little bit, the population was such that one person such as yourself could support a family because the competition for jobs, for land, for housing was so low, right?
Right.
But you're not dealing with that.
No.
You're not dealing with that. You're dealing with the largest population in U.S. history, in a large part because of how my generation and the Gen X generation voted, right?
Right.
So that is something that you guys are suffering from. But unfortunately, this isn't a complaint I ever hear from your generation. It's always, oh, everybody else has more than us, and never like, hey, we should probably vote smarter and more differently than previous generations. It never focuses on the actual like population growth and the surge on that. It's just bitching about the money. And unfortunately, when it comes to money, Gen Z is actually doing better than you guys think. You ready for this?
Wow.
Correct. No, I would agree.
No, you guys need to hear these numbers. For Gen Z, you guys need to hear these numbers, okay? In 1980, when boomers were entering their prime home buying years, mortgage rates spiked above 16%, and the average monthly home loan payment jumped 34% year over year. So they were buying during the worst interest rates in American history. Furthermore, During the years when boomers turned 30, the share of household income needed to make the typical mortgage payment averaged 33%, the highest of any living generation. In contrast, millennials faced the lowest percentage thanks to a decade of low rates following the Great Recession. So, before millennials and Gen Z want to cry about the cost of boomer and Gen X homes, Gen X and boomers were buying at the highest interest rates in recorded history.
But how much was the house?
It doesn't matter.
But it
It's
does, though.
income. It's
Here's the
debt
thing. All
to
right, I did
income.
my-
You're talking about debt to income.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. How much were
Debt
you
to
making
income
in
for the
1980?
boomer, debt to income for boomer was higher than what you have. So they sucked it up and they did their thing.
100%. And I know what you're going to say, right? You're going to say, oh, the cost of their house was low, right?
Right. We're talking like $20,000 to $50,000.
What do you do for a job?
What do I do?
Yes.
I own a business. So I'm
The
actually
house is
No, no,
worth
what is-
$20,000.
What is your business? You are able to do
post-production, podcast, distribution, videography, stuff like that.
And can you work for people just in your area, or are you able to pretty much run your business for anyone with a camera and a laptop?
Technically, I could, yeah, anybody. And that's why I'm a little bit different than the average Gen Zer, because most of them are working at Panera Bread or McDonald's or
Doing minimum wage
doing
jobs,
minimum
yeah.
wage, which I have had minimum wage jobs. I mean, my last job, I was paid horribly. Like I made $20,000 a year, $25,000 a year trying to support a family.
Yeah.
Granted, that's and we'll get to that. It's like that was on me.
Yeah.
And so I did something about it. But even still, like I did something about it and it's still not enough.
One side where I do agree with you, I heavily agree with you, is the fact that you are concurrently dealing with higher interest rates and the highest housing cost in U.S. history, right?
Right.
It's a combination of both of those things at once for a generation graduating and realizing that their college degree and the debt they took on isn't worth really what a lot of them were paying, right?
Right.
That's, to me, I feel like what you guys are dealing with isn't so much a housing issue, it's the consequences of how the other three generations in here put forward their
Right.
ideas.
I just got a bad draw of when I was born.
And also, everybody.
I got a bad draw. If I was doing
There
this
it
now,
goes. That's the
30
Gen Z
years
in
ago,
him.
There's
That's
the
the
Gen Z.
Gen
Still
Z.
wider. You know, and I look at it
There's
too,
the Gen Z in him.
with the people buying. You just don't have any patience.
right? Because everything. I mean, well, look how quickly is a house on the market now?
You typically in Vegas, you're looking at anywhere from like 25 to 32 days.
Okay, what am I supposed to do in 25 to 32 days? Instantly just become a millionaire and then be like, okay, I can actually afford to jump through all these
You're
loopholes.
26,
Right.
right? Okay.
Correct.
The average first-time home buyer is 34,
Right.
right? And have you taken all the steps to really make the money that you want to make in whatever you've done 4 years? Do you think 4 years is enough to really build your income? Do you think it's also, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do better, right?
Right.
And you're getting better, but it's like, I want it now. And it doesn't always happen now.
It's
No.
hard to-
It
it's
takes
har-
time.
It's really hard to feel bad for Gen Z when they're so good at victimizing themselves. You know
Hell
what I mean?
yeah.
Every time I try
best.
to defend you guys, you are so quick to jump so deep into victimhood that I want to rip you guys apart. Right? It's like I give you guys you're like that mouse where I give you a little bit of cookie of sympathy,
And I want a whole cookie.
and you guys want the whole damn batch of cookies. Where it's like,
Cookie.
it's like, guess what? Boomers couldn't do. They couldn't work from home behind a camera and a laptop. They couldn't live in Thailand and make $100K doing drop shipping on Amazon. Right? They couldn't run a podcast studio where their job is doing something that they love. They had to work in mines. They had to work in factories. They had to do grimy ass jobs that you guys would never want to do.
Or
And
that
I've
they
done them
won't
though.
do.
I've done
that
them.
they
though. I've
won't
worked
do.
in-
That they won't do.
I agree. They're like the difference for me. Those I've done a lot of like, and this is just me, not Gen Z, because I do get. And that's the thing is like I do agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. Like I have a younger sibling who's Gen Z who has never worked a decent job and never shows the initiative
Yeah.
or the want to go get a better job, as opposed to like somebody like me.
So how does that sibling support himself or herself?
They don't. They live with my parents with no intention of moving ever. I am actively like right now. I'm trying to find an
I'm just
apartment.
going to call you out on something.
Right, what?
One of my biggest pet peeves of your generation is I just asked, what does he do or she do or where do they live? And you said they.
She?
It's one
Sure.
of my big. Okay, it's one
Sure.
of my biggest pet peeves. Your generation is generalizing.
Caesar is currently living with my parents.
Caesar.
My sister is currently
Okay.
she's living with my parents, and but has like no intention of trying to move or trying to get
So
out.
that's on your parents.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Gen X.
One last thing for Gen Z before Gen X steps up here and busts everybody's heads.
I feel like I should go last.
No. I need you fired because I honestly think Gen X has the biggest and most viable complaint. They're the silent group right now. Everybody's talking
Silent?
about they are. It's a lot of millennials, Gen Z, kind of doing this conversation, but I think Gen X has the biggest gripe. Before I go, I need Gen Z to hear one more thing because, as always, I think you guys are the biggest, most codified pussies in the world. And if you would just use the internet for anything other than cats and pornography, you would see that. The home ownership rates for Gen Zers 19 through 25 are higher than the home ownership rates for millennials and Gen Xers when they were the same age.
Wow.
For example, the rate for a 24-year-old Gen Zer to own a home is 28%, compared to 24% for millennials and 23% for Gen Xers. I think the biggest problem is you guys don't see how good you have it. You focus on all the negatives. Oh, the houses cost this much, instead of being like, houses are making this much. You focus on the people who don't have homes instead of the people that do. And most importantly, you guys act like the universe started in the year 2009. You ignore everything that happened before the year 2000 as if like, oh, wait, let's do some research and realize millennials didn't own homes at your ages. Boomers didn't own homes at your ages. You guys are the first generation who turned 24 and thought you deserved a remodeled home on Zillow.
And I think social media is totally
Wait, can I?
influenced.
Is that possible?
I mean, I think social media,
Of course.
with
Yeah,
everybody
definitely.
showing,
Of course.
hey, look what I got.
Yeah.
Look what I got. Buy this house, get a rental property, do this.
Yeah.
And I think it's unfortunately influenced you in a bad way.
100%. 100%. So
how do we fix this? What do I
you're-
need to do?
You're not happy with saying I can get the 1-bedroom apartment type condo purchase home.
Here's the thing, though. I mean, okay, I guess do we have to
You
break the
guys-
fourth wall?
you
I'm
guys
actively
want
working
the
with Bill,
mansion.
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah,
do
you
it. And
guys-
I was looking at reasonable like condos, townhouses. Like I'm not trying, me specifically, I'm not trying to get the 4-bedroom house, in summer. I mean, that'd be great. I mean, can we
Yeah.
make that happen, guys? But
Yeah, for the audience, Austin's actually trying to do a loan with
Bill.
a boomer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I'm actually following the steps, but I'm also
Yeah.
trying to argue on behalf of Gen Z because Gen Z, yeah, definitely complain the most because I feel like we've, at least for my age, like I remember being able to go, like playing outside till the house lights came on. I remember drinking hose water. I remember like before the internet, like going like if all the bikes were outside your friend's house, that's where everybody was. But then also a lot of my life has also been spent MySpace, Facebook, Instagram, all that. Yeah, we complain the most, I would say, in terms of on social media of just like when the housing crisis. Like I don't know. Maybe it's because I do this show. I understand the difference of like what houses mean.
Yeah.
But for sure, like Gen Z definitely doesn't do their research nearly enough as they should.
I don't, and I try to. One thing that Gen Z has to understand before we move on is that you guys are also the most single generation in that your lifestyle, where you support and you try to raise a family solo, would have worked as a boomer. You would fit better in Bill's generation, right? This concept of like, I'm going to be a man, I'm going to carry my family on my back. I want my wife to take care of the kids, and I'm going to carry this family myself. You would do well in Bill's generation,
right, where that was the norm.
I think you're a man out of time, truthfully.
Right.
Truthfully, I do. Because you live in a generation where, I tell people this all the time, single people don't buy homes. They just don't. Out of the 40 people or so that we've helped over the past 12 months, I think 2 of them did it solo. Everybody has a partner, a co-signer, somebody.
Well, I do
riding
have a
with them.
co-signer, and that's the only way I'm going to be able to even contemplate getting it. And also, I think it's funny. I was telling Robert about this the other day. The only reason why I thought home ownership was possible is because I got slammed into by a car and got paid out for it. That's the only way I thought home ownership is possible now. And I mean, that's what I'm doing with it is like, Okay, I'm putting that towards a house, which I think is the smartest thing to do, but still, but if that hadn't happened, I'd have been like, all right, well, maybe I can find a decent apartment. But now I'm like, oh, home ownership might actually be possible.
In a wreck, need a check?
Hey, they do their show out of here too.
There's a lot out there. And I think, Austin, you have done an amazing job because you want to get into a home. You
Right.
have the desire to get into the home.
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of people, they will not make changes. They won't live with family. They won't do
Right.
things. They won't cut back in things. And you have really done a good job at really focusing on buying a house.
I have to give Gen Z one credit, though, and I think you guys are bringing back the entrepreneurial spirit of America.
Yeah.
I have a lot of
agree.
19-year-old kids who reach out to me, and they're like, how do I get started on multifamily? How do I get started on this?
Yeah, no,
how do I get a side hustle?
The ones
right?
that do the research are doing the research. Like if I were single, legitimately, like if I didn't have a family, I would legitimately look at like house hacking with somebody like Robert or like maybe like George or somebody like that, being like, how do we buy a multifamily? But I think because I've been influenced by you guys, but like a lot of Gen Z still just don't care to do the research, and to your point, we'll just go and be like, I'm working at Starbucks and I'm mad. It's like, okay, well, have you actively tried to see what you could do to not work at Starbucks and work at a better job? Like
100%.
I used to job hop a lot, and I think that added to my mentality of like I can go do something different.
Yep.
Because I've worked every type of job. I've worked at a veterinary clinic. I've worked for utility like Southwest Gas. I've worked in finance. I've worked in production. I've worked in video games. I kind of worked in everything, and then I kind of landed on the best way to do it for myself is to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I think this is the highest compliment I give somebody. I'm proud to know you as a person because I think you're willing to do whatever it takes to feed your family. I truly believe you're just a man out of time.
Right.
Right? I think you're a man out of time. Sincerely.
Benjamin Button.
Benjamin Button, man at a time. So next up, we have. Oh, I'm sorry.
One thing I want to say about your generation. No, and it's sad that this is what the Boomers and Gen Xers did to your generation. Is it was the biggest experiment to give children an iPad or give children a device or give children something of electronics, basically to raise you. And you're the first generation that was just like, here you go. Let's just see how it turns out.
But he's not the iPad.
Well, yeah, no, I'm not the.
But you're younger.
Yeah.
The younger ones
Well,
of
they
your
were-
generation are.
Yeah, I mean, you were raised as. I honestly, this is where I
The
disagree.
20-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't get my own personal like phone until like 7th or 8th grade.
Yeah.
So at that
Once
point,
again, that's
right? That's young. I get it. I get it. It's young.
Mine till I was 30.
Cell phones didn't exist back then, Bill.
But they didn't exist.
Yeah,
But
you
it
guys
was-
had the brick and you just carried it around.
It was the experiment. So the millennials were the first kids to not be raised by a stay-at-home mom and have a parent.
We were raised by TV.
Right. But then your generation,
Jerry Springer.
it went down. It went down to there's two working parents to support.
See, I'm also different though because I had two working parents very early on, and then my mom became a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
So we actively had a parent at home.
Yeah.
And then I think in middle school, once we got older, then my mom was like, okay, I can go back to work.
Yeah.
But like my formative years, like elementary school, I want to say like maybe like kindergarten and first grade she worked, and then after that she was at home.
Yeah,
Man, that's
but
hard,
it's
man.
just unfortunate that your generation was like, here you go, and let's see how
Here's
you turn
MySpace,
out.
learn how to code.
Let's see how the YouTube generation turns out
course.
and see if you do something. So I really feel that
Now I'm
is the
making money on
fault-
YouTube.
That's the fault of the parents, whether
previous
it's,
generations.
Yeah,
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
it's
100%.
boomers or yeah.
But can't every generation kind of make that argument though? Like I know
Yes.
with like the boomers, like their parents oftentimes were like, okay, we're coming back from the war. I'm going to be this big businessman now. And then, oh, why does my kid have an addiction? Because I'm not home because I'm trying
That's
to.
Gen X too.
Gen
for
X too.
sure.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
my
We're
dad
like the
was raised.
prescription generation.
My dad had to raise all his siblings because it was a single parent household, and my grandmother worked all the time. So like my dad never had siblings or never had somebody at home like that.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're getting to my personal favorite generation, the generation that I believe has the most complaints and the most reasons to be afraid of the housing market, and that's Gen X, because Gen Xers were born into the 1980s recession. They were born into the crack epidemic. They were born into all the tribulations that we went through in the 80s. Then they had to deal with the dot-com crash of the 2000s, where they said, oh, here's the internet, here's the websites, they're going to save us. Oh, wait, that failed, right? So they went from one failure to the next failure, and then right as they're hitting their peak, right as they're hitting their formative years, the real estate market gets attacked, and we know how that went, right? So every time they had any sense of optimism, here was something to crush their spirit. Is that something that you felt? Is it something that you thought about? Or is it something that you think about now in your later years?
I think about that now in my later years for sure. And I was on the other podcast talking about millennials, and I'm actually closer to Gen X, right? I'm on the kind of cusp of both. So seeing all that technical opportunities,
Yeah.
real estate opportunities, economic opportunities, like just kind of whiz by you
Yeah.
as you're watching this like chaos happen, right? Like we had Reagan, we had Bush, we had the war, Desert Storm, like all this crap was happening.
Yeah.
And we were also the start of the distraction generation because we were the first generation to actually have toys, Game Boy, NES. Like there was that also was a factor of, there's more distractions for our generation. The boomers, what were they? They were made to
Throw rocks at each
No,
other.
well, look, they only had 3 things. This is how I see it. The boomers had to go to college,
Yep.
make a family, buy a home. 3 things. They only had to do 3 things. They didn't have, anything else to distract them, right? But Gen X, we had prescription medication because we were depressed. We were the first generation that was
Self-medicated.
self-aware
Yeah.
about anxiety and depression and stuff like that. I mean, that existed for you guys, but you guys kind of just like tough it out, tough it out. Like, their parents went to war, tough it out. Like, be a man. That was the whole thing about the boomers. Like, just tough it out. Gen X, okay, we have feelings now, guys? Oh my gosh. We have feelings. We're able to have fun. My parents didn't have fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they were just like, go to work, go to college, 3 things.
Yeah.
Like, 3 things you could do.
I think you guys were the first generation to try to have to figure out how to juggle the work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is because you had so many distractions, so many entertainment options, right? And nowadays, we're even worse at it.
Yeah.
Right? We have so much. There's 10,000 channels. There's
Make sure
a
to watch
million
this one,
new
though.
video games. Yeah, and make sure to watch this one. There's a million. There's social media for that minute-to-minute, up-to-date interaction, right? But by now, I've grown up in this, right? I was born into this. I've kind of known how to juggle my entertainment. I turn it on here. I have time slots for it, whatever. For you guys, it was just all at once,
Yeah.
right? And every time you guys saw a ray of light, a way out, there was something to stomp that hope out, right? So the internet comes around, and you guys are the first. I can't imagine being the first people to be like, wait a minute, I can connect everything everywhere at all times, right? The world's information is at my doorstep, and having to juggle that.
Well, also, the marketing material or the society at the time wasn't pushing homes, like owning a home. It wasn't cool to own a home.
Were you pushed
right?
college?
I was pushed to go to college.
Because I remember elementary, middle school, high school. They're like, you need to go to college.
Yeah.
Boy, what a scam
I didn't
that
go
was.
to college, but I was. They would really actually they didn't push me, but everybody around me
disagree
was
with that.
pushed. Everybody around me was pushed, but finance wasn't cool. You'd either be called a yuppie,
Yeah.
or a Wall Street yuppie
Yeah.
back in the day,
Yeah.
or you were doing cool things like skateboarding and rollerblading, whatever the freaking cool new toy that came out
Yeah.
was. Comic books were my thing,
It was like a cultural backlash to do the traditional American value.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, they had the hippies, right? I think the boomers had the hippies.
Yeah.
And so Gen X is the yuppie generation, right?
Yeah.
Like Wall Street was cool, but that was a whole different vibe as a kid growing up in LA, that none of that was like ever appealing to me, or even I didn't even know about it. Like it wasn't a thing that was on TV.
Yeah.
The only cool yuppie on TV was Michael J. Fox as like that kid.
Fox.
Yeah.
What was that show? Do you remember that show?
Yes.
He was the yuppie kid, Republican
Yeah.
kid, and he was like,
Is that what yuppie means? Is like conservative value?
yeah.
Okay.
It's just the phrase is like hippie turned yuppie. It's all the
Yeah.
cultural
professional-
the cultural
okay.
cosplaying hippies who practice free love and all that, and then turned around and run mega corporations.
And they were like,
Yeah.
I own Coca-Cola now.
yeah,
correct.
100%.
But some of those young, let's just say those people are now the Elon Musk. They're like Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
I would consider them Gen Xers, right? Like they're sort of in that I don't think they're boomers. Like Zuckerberg.
Elon isn't.
Zuckerberg's
I
probably
think
in that space.
I think Zuck is more like millennial. I think he's like elder millennial.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
for sure millennial.
Yeah.
for sure. But
We're
like,
he and I are the same age.
yes,
Warren Buffett.
One of the things that I think people don't talk about is what you're saying right now. According to the National Real Estate Association, Gen Xers remain, after the whole 2000s, the highest earning home buyer group with an average median income of $114,000, because the Gen Xers who survived the dot-com boom, the 80s recession, the housing market, they fought their way through those things. And the ones who made it out the other side were like, okay, what's the worst that could happen to me now, right? I've seen rock bottom. Here's where we go from here. And I think that's where that entrepreneurial spirit, right?
well, we're also under the boomers, so like that's still stuck to us. All the trauma and abuse and nagging still, like at some point came.
Yeah.
It stuck to my head, you know. Like, so I'm now telling millennials to tough it out, and like, you know, you have to sacrifice.
He hits me daily.
You have to, you know what I mean? So I'm like, there's a little boomer in me,
Yeah.
but no, I'm not.
There's a
full
little
boomer.
boomer in
I wanna-
everybody.
I
I'm not
wanna
full
add
boomer.
to you though, but you're also an immigrant.
Yes.
And so,
that-
you had immigrant parents.
Yes.
And so that also adds in a completely different layer to who you are as an individual and who you are as an American man.
That's absolutely true. Like, that's absolutely true. If you visit other parts of the world, you have a different perspective. And we're talking about real estate here in America, right? So I have a worldly perspective when it comes to poverty and like, well, when it comes to how to sacrifice, and and you know, sacrifice is a huge part of finances,
100%.
right? You have to like not drink the Starbucks. You have to cook from home. You have to like sleep on a couch, which I did for like a couple.
I'm still sleeping on a couch.
Couple months, right?
I'm currently
and,
sleeping on a
and to
couch.
give Austin credit, he's a very like. If you're a Gen Z, be like Austin. Surround yourself around smarter people, and that sort of helps you, you know, kind of level up. And I think this is the point of the podcast is, yes, we're like kind of trolling each other, but we want to make sure that we're actually on the same page. We're all on the same page here as far as real estate will get you through. Will actually build you financial.
It's the best investment you can
Yes.
make.
And Robert, I look at the 2007, 2008 housing crash. You were
Housing attack.
housing attack. You were what?
Bill wasn't
probably
giving out the
about,
loans.
You were
28.
probably 28
Yeah,
at that
28.
time.
Yeah.
You're going into the prime buying time period, right?
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out how to make sure that you can make a living, but at the same time, the housing market was under attack.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So you had a bad time to really.
The music was
try
better
and buy.
though. They're
You talk
starting to
about-
call it recession core.
I mean, looking back at it, you could look at it and go, "Wow, that was the best time to buy because values had dropped so much."
But how do you
it
how do you
was
know
tough.
that? How do you know that? So think about
You
this.
don't.
In the year
Hindsight is
2008,
2020.
right? Are you sitting here thinking about, oh, well, future housing values, and you're like, no,
No.
the house that I just bought is worthless. Oh, this fucking like you guys told me this house buying was the best thing for me. All the boomers said, buy a house. They always make money. Buy a house. And then the second you guys start to buy homes, right when you guys hit your house buying peak, right, the beginning of the market gets attacked.
Yeah,
And-
but that's caused by corporate greed. You know what I mean? That's
Sure.
really like the reason why the economy crashed was a lot of like bad lending practices, right?
Bill.
They were handing mortgages to unqualified people.
Why
right?
didn't I buy a house in 04? That's the question I'm really asking. I shouldn't have been going to kindergarten. I should have been buying a house.
So that was a huge factor for like people in my age,
Yeah.
right? Like they lost a lot of money because
Yeah.
they also bought into sort of like, I would say, a false hope, right? They're like, here's a home, I can make money from a home, and then it just tanked, like everything just crashed.
Well, and no one,
Which was
one of the
was
biggest
very
reasons-
rare though. That hasn't happened again because there's better lending practices now.
Well,
And-
100%.
And everyone now has to be very, very, very,
Very
very qualified to buy a home.
And because people realized, oh look, the housing prices bounced right back. Right? Like that's to me, I think that is the reason why Gen X secretly owns the percentage of homes that they do. Is because there are some Gen Xers who are so traumatized by the housing attack, they'll never own another home again. I know people
yes.
who are in their
Yes.
mid-40s and like, dude, I'm gonna rent forever. I'll never
Yes.
do it again. That's what trauma does to people, right?
Yeah.
But there's another group of Gen Xers who sat there and go, wait a minute. In a few years, those housing prices didn't just come back. They're even more expensive now. Real estate is bulletproof, right? And the amount of home buying and second home buying that Gen Xers have done over the past 10 years still hasn't been accounted for.
I remember the insider attack, we'll call it that, in 08. My parents owned their second house, not second at the same time.
How old
but,
are your parents? Are they my age?
They're in their 50s.
Right.
They're Gen Xers. My dad is 50.
Am I Austin's dad?
Might be. My dad's, I think, 55, 54, 55, around there, and then my mom's 53. But so I remember we had a house in Spring Valley. It was a duplex, so that was how they didn't own both of them, but it was cheaper because they had one half. Then they bought the house that we have now. Granted, it was still only $134,000, and now it's almost $400,000. I remember during the recession that we were going to get foreclosed on, and my parents sat through that and were like, "No, we'll just stare it right in the face and just
Eat it.
and eat it and tough it out." And they still have the house, and my dad still is.
Yeah.
My dad is, thankfully willing to co-sign with me on this house because I do need the help.
Yeah.
But also because he understands the importance of that investment. But that's what you're talking about with the Gen Xers that didn't get averse from.
By the way, I am the Gen X that bought a home by himself. I bought the home with just me.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was only 4 years ago after being bankrupt. So
Yeah.
there is, as long as you put a plan together, you can still do it.
You see that?
Yeah.
So you said something very important earlier, and it's that a lot of Gen Xers still, despite rebelling against that boomer generation, you guys held on to a lot of that mentality of sacrifice, working hard, dig in deep, right? Even when the times get tough, you guys held on to a lot of that, right? So even as you guys were like, oh, I'm gonna skateboard, I'm gonna be a tattoo artist, I'm gonna do all the things that are cool. In the back of your head, you guys were still successful tattoo artists because you applied that boomer spirit. I'm gonna be a skateboarder. I'm gonna be the best skateboarder.
Yeah.
Tony Hawk.
right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get into film and production. I'm gonna treat this shit like a business, right?
I think we paved the way for millennials and Gen Z to
Yeah.
do whatever they want,
Yeah,
right? But we
100%.
we're just a little late to the game, or again, I mean, it's never too late. I always think it's never too late
No.
to get your shit together.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and Robert's probably one of the hardest working guys I know.
Yep.
He does not-
I mean, we're sitting
he
in the
does not
studio
slow
that
down.
my company
Yeah.
owns, right?
Yeah.
So like,
I don't know if Robert knows how to actually take time for himself. He
doesn't.
Legitimately.
That's that's the boomer in him,
That
man.
is the boomer
That's
in me.
in him.
I remember we were coming back. We were driving back from California, and I was like, "So what does your day look like?" And he's the rest of your day, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to Trader Joe's, and then I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do some work, and I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna do laundry, and then I'll go to bed around 11." And I was like, "Wow, my day's so different when I go
Yeah,
home."
my day is
Like-
different. I
like-
work a lot, and I'm at a certain point, 8 p.m., I'm like, okay, for my sanity, I'm going to stop working. I'm going to spend time doing what I want to do.
I'm in bed at 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, the little one's in bed at 8, but no, that's my free time. That's
well,
the
we live in America. It's the best. I still think, again, from my worldly perspective, because I've lived in very, very poor countries. America literally is one of those countries where you can keep starting over and over and over,
and
as
over.
long as you just put in the work. Bill started over at in his 50s and 60s, so it's for you guys listening, we're trying to shed some light in this can work if you just apply yourself.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think you guys Gen X did pave the way. They did pave the way for people to. Now, you guys didn't have it all figured out, right? Because you guys. I
don't think anybody has it all figured out.
Right. The first person to do something, right? You're MySpace. You guys were like, oh, where's the opportunities,
MySpace.
right? And then obviously future generations kicked that thing in. I want to get to the generation that everybody on the internet hates the most.
We love you, Bill, though. We love you.
Yeah.
Or baby
I'm lovable.
boomers.
I can, yeah.
Okay. Baby boomers, as we just said earlier, are Americans described between the ages of 59 and 78. And the reason everyone hates them is because they own everything. They comprise 20% of the U.S. population and yet account for nearly 40% of nationwide homes and nearly 42% of all housing equity.
They just won't die.
Boomers.
It's because we're old. It's because we started a long time ago.
Boomers currently have $18 trillion in housing wealth, more than triple the amount owned by millennials.
I'm out of here.
Yep. All right, guys. We can wrap here.
Now, Bill,
Yes.
as a boomer, what is it that you think your generation did right, and what is it that something that you guys maybe did wrong that looking back you wish they'd have tried something different?
I think we were talking a little bit about it earlier. The distractions that some of the other generations had,
Yeah.
we didn't. Like my play was going out into a field and playing football,
Yeah.
playing flag football, playing tennis ball, baseball, doing all that kind of stuff. So we also, in my opinion, had better education. I think we had to learn certain things.
Yeah.
And then I think from a college standpoint, it was not everybody went to college, but it was certainly
A higher percentage.
higher percentage of going to college.
I think you guys
and,
were the-
and college isn't like, honestly, my degree was in marketing, and I don't use a lot of the stuff, but I think a lot of it is that you finish things.
Yeah.
And I don't think that some of the younger generation knows how to finish anything. I think they start and then they stop. They start and then they stop.
Yeah.
And I think in my generation, a lot of people, if they got through college, they could do something else that would last. They would go to a job that would last. They would, really learn a trade that would get them long term. And I think if you look at the boomers, the long term employment that they have is probably what the consistency of it really helped them out.
One of the benefits of the boomers, and I will repeat this a million times, is that your population density allowed for long-term planning and thinking, right? If a job hired you, there weren't 20,000 people new to this country that they would just replace you with for $1 cheaper, right? There was a level of security because especially if you had a degree, how many people were there to compete with,
Yeah.
right? So the opportunity was there. One of the biggest issues I have with boomers, and I've brought this up with each generation, is the way that boomers, baby boomers, I don't like the word boomers, it feels too derogative. Baby boomers
That
had
feels
this,
more derogative. Calling him a baby? I know the reason why is because there was a boom of babies after World War II, but
I feel like baby boomers have this, everybody dig in and work hard and you can make it, but then your generation is the generation that basically was like, nah, screw what our parents did. Let's vote differently on everything, allow everything to go chaotic and crazy, and you guys are the ones who profit the most from that, right? Your businesses that you guys started profit the most from how many people are in America now, because now you guys have infinite employees to replace other employees, right? And so it's easy to live in the ivory tower and say, everybody work harder when there's no chance of them replacing you, right? You have enough experience under your belt now that you're irreplaceable, right?
But not everybody's at that level, right? I do believe that, I've worked hard. I think a lot of people do work hard in that baby boomer generation.
Sure.
Depending upon what their job is, right? So I agree with you, but a lot of it is just time in the industry. Sometimes, like real estate, people that had started 20 years ago, if they kept doing it and they worked hard and they kept learning and they kept expanding the way they, do things, they've done well.
20 years ago, there was 4,500 agents in Las Vegas. Now there's over 17,000, right? So even the amount I have to work to even stay level with, okay, so let's say there's another agent out there and all they do is 2 deals per year. That's 32,000 people that I don't get to work with if they just do 2 deals per year, right? The level of competition, this is one of the things I try to get across to boomers is because not that you guys live in a bubble, but you guys don't have to ever interact with the world that we do. You guys have your own universe where you guys aren't going to downtown Fremont Street. You guys aren't at job fairs. You guys aren't seeing just how many people, right? They're just numbers. They're just employees, right? And you guys came into a world created by your parents who voted historically one way, pretty strongly, right? And then you guys were the generations who opened up the world to like, everybody just do whatever the hell you want. You guys preached work hard, but then your votes went to make life easy for other people, right? And that's why we see kind of that transition from Gen X where more distractions, more excuses, more feelings. And then you guys act like, and this is where my frustrations come in. You guys act like, well, I don't know how this happened. When it's like, you voted for it.
And
That
they-
was you. You
they-
did that.
They also have all the money. So that's
And
like,
they
if
also
you
have
think
all the
about
money, yeah.
the rules are, the system's really set up for I think they benefited the most.
They
from
made the system around
from
themselves.
the system, yeah.
Well, one of the things that differentiated the boomers you mentioned college and career and things like that, if a boomer went to college, that completely set a different track for that person.
Yeah.
That person was set up
Yep.
to be earning more money than the person that did not.
Yeah.
And that person was set up to work for a company and get the gold watch when you retired. And
Sure.
that was the expectation of it.
Well, watch this, Bill. What did it cost you to go to college? See?
It was $1,500 a semester.
So how much was it for your entire degree, if you had to guess?
But I'm going to turn it back at you.
Right. I
Isn't
dropped out.
junior college free? Can't you get a junior college
No, you
in
still
a
have to-
lot of different areas?
It's like
It's certainly-
$20 a unit or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
My
it's
sister,
like
just, my
nothing.
sister just had to drop, I think, $3,000 for one class for a semester at CSN.
Okay.
For CSN, yeah. So
For CSN, I dropped out of film school because I am under the guise of, if you're a lawyer, a doctor, or there's some other things, you have to go to college because you have to be trained. Most jobs now, I would much rather you have the experience than the degree. And I dropped out, and I'm still 50,000 in the hole.
Yeah.
And I dropped out.
If you don't major in science, technology, engineering, and math, it's most likely your degree almost isn't worth the paper it's printed on anymore, but you still have the massive student loan debts,
Right.
right? So people are telling you, work harder, do that. And it's like you have this $100,000 bill hanging over your head. So I would love to explore my options and work hard and do something I'm passionate about, but I got to pay the government back this gigantic check, and my degree isn't making me enough money because guess what? Now there's a million other people with the same degree as me, and we're all working at Starbucks.
Yep.
Yeah, but
and we were told at every step of the way you need to go get that
You need to
degree.
go get the degree, yeah.
But at the same time, I do believe there was definitely issues with student loans and people taking advantage of them and
Yeah.
people living on them as opposed to working and going to school.
That-
So I think there was a lot of, there was a lot of people that were just taking advantage of the school loan system.
Oh, I was one of those
And-
people. No, listen.
See, I was the opposite. I was working full time and going to school full time.
Yeah,
I was one of
and-
those people.
And I had student loans and I paid it off. I was 30 years old by the time I paid it off. So
Damn,
it's-
I'm 26
now
and I haven't even made one payment.
Well,
'cause
that's a
they keep-
huge one.
they keep
We're talking
deferring
about
them.
debt right now, right?
Yeah.
If I think even Gen X is the debt generation for sure, and I think we just pass on our debt mindset because credit card companies are just marketing to everyone, and it's so easy to have this money without the education.
Yep.
And I think it's irresponsible for these corporations and banks to be like, here you go, but there's no education behind it, right? Like,
Those companies owned by
boomers.
there's no millennial there's no millennial credit card company, right? Like that's not us, right?
Why
That's
not? Let's
us.
do it. Let's do it today.
It's too late. They've locked the market. But boomers have a monopoly on the flow of credit, money, and banking, right? They feel like the last generation where those opportunities were. Oh, I can't just go start a bank, right? Like that's not in my wheelhouse. Brandon, go start a mortgage company. Go start a title. Like what? These things. There's so many mega corporations out there that dominate the market. Where is there room for us to start that, right? So like the opportunities for massive corporate growth like that are super limited. And I think this is where, now I'm not one of those people who hates on baby boomers. That's not my thing. I actually have a lot of pride in baby boomers. I think they did a lot of things the right way. I take a lot of their mentalities and apply them to my business. But we do have to voice some of the frustrations in like, okay, during COVID, the most common house being purchased was baby boomers buying second and third homes. So the whole world is freaking out about everybody dying, and baby boomers were like, let's use our equity to, make sure that these other people can't buy houses.
Rhode Island this
You
time?
know?
Yeah, but
like-
that's because they were educated, though.
On
They're
how really-
smart
And
enough
And they
to
already
know-
had the money
it was
runway.
financial education.
Yeah.
They knew what the market was going to do, and they took advantage of it.
Yeah, but did you have wood shop and auto body in high
Yes.
school?
They took it out for us.
Why did you guys allow them to make education worse? You saw them doing
Bill.
it. You
Why?
guys, your generation saw them
Look at
remove.
CCSD specifically. It's
you-
awful.
You saw them remove auto body. You saw them remove financial education. You saw them teaching the new generation less and less. And you guys were making so much money that no one seemed to give a shit.
Because our generation wasn't interested in that shit. That's probably it
We weren't
too.
taught.
Yeah.
We weren't taught.
I work on my cars now. Like I love. If there was an auto shop class in my high school, I would have taken it.
Yeah,
But they didn't have
I think that was such a great thing to have at school. I think financial education is probably financial literacy they talk about. It is really low for most everybody. They
We
don't know.
never taught it. We were
they
never
don't
told
know
about
what
taxes
they
or
get
anything like
into
that.
on a credit card. So when they come out of high school or they get out of college, all of a sudden they're slammed. Their credit scores are in the tank.
Yeah.
They can't do anything. They can't get out of it. And then it becomes a cycle where they're like, oh, I'm going to fix my credit. And they just don't know how to do it.
Sure, but I never blame the dog. I never blame the kid. I blame the master, whoever raised it, right? There's a steep decline. You can quite literally see it. That between boomers and Gen X, there's a steep decline in financial literacy, right? That hippie generation, the end of the boomer generation, the hippie generation, completely decided, fuck it, right? We don't need to teach them these things that made us wealthy. They're fine. Let's teach them about love and give them movies and give them Disney. That's you guys. You guys run the media companies. You run the companies that feed people the garbage. That's not Gen X. Gen X doesn't do that, right? That's not millennials. We may have done the social media, but our social media is just taking the lessons we learned from previous generations and feeding it to the next generation, right? There is a definite line drawn between baby boomers and Gen X where you guys decided, nah, we don't need to teach them that crap. Let's just give them movies. Let's give them Disney. We'll invent the game. Like we'll invent
Thank
things.
you. We enjoy that.
We enjoy the distractions, but like you guys invented that.
So part of it is work ethic. From the standpoint of because of the distractions, not having the ability to just turn that distraction off. So I think that changing that, I do believe the education piece, in my opinion, is huge. And where it went wrong, I couldn't tell you. I guess it's just been over time, hard to keep up with all that stuff. And so I don't really know.
When you say education, what do you specifically mean? Do you mean college? Do you mean high school? Do you mean the requirements? Do you mean physical ed? Do you mean home ec? Do you mean math? Your generation was required to go to college to get ahead. So what does that mean?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the education has become more lax. I think that some of the standards for math should be higher. I think that there should be home ec. I think there should be auto body
maybe
shop.
accounting.
I think there should be.
I would have loved
Okay.
a financial literacy course in high school. I would have loved it.
Like your first credit card education.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think that 100% the financial aspect of it, how to do a bank account. I don't think they teach that.
Taxes,
how to
maybe
figure out
earlier,
how
huh?
to balance your.
But
your
to be
bank.
cynical, do they want us to know that? They
No.
just want us to stay in
Well,
debt.
that's-
They
and
want us to
that's-
keep taking on credit cards.
That's
They
where
don't.
that's
That's
where
the problem.
my millennial pessimism comes into play because I'm an observer and I say, okay, you're right. You're right. These things are important. Work ethic is important. Education is important. Why didn't you guys teach that?
That's why there's so many bitter generations
Yeah.
to the boomers.
Why didn't you?
Because
why
we're
didn't you-
woke. We're like,
Yeah.
we see what you guys did.
Why didn't you
We
teach
see
that?
the rules you guys
Yeah.
set up.
You
We
guys were the
see-
start of the divorce generation. You guys were the start of the hippie generation, the free love generation. All the things that have escalated into the problems that he's dealing with now, 50 years later, they started. You can literally pinpoint it there of where they stopped educating people, where they stopped teaching people financial literacy. You guys watched your kids go to school and not learn the traits that you knew were successful. Why did nobody step in? And I think it's because you guys, and it's not just you, Bill, but you have to sit here and take it for your whole generation. I think you guys,
Yeah, Bill's a different type of boomer.
you guys were so caught up in the American, we went from the American dream to the American rat race of like, how much money can I make? And you guys are so focused on that we stopped focusing on teaching the kids the valuable lessons that got you guys there in the first place. You guys were like, well, we're making so much money, our kids will be fine, right? I've built them a great life. I have tons of money. They have an easier life. They have an easier life than I had, right? So you gave them an easier life, but not the same education, right? So when we say, well, education is a thing and work ethic is a thing, who stopped teaching them work ethic and education, right? There has to be a source of where that stopped. And I blame it on you.
And you blame it on me.
All of it,
well,
Bill.
The
All
interesting
of it.
thing, because I was, I am baby boomer. My dad was greatest generation, right? So that greatest generation were savers. They went through
Depression,
all
yeah.
sorts of struggles and the depression. So similar to maybe some other generations as well, but they were a saving generation. When the economy got better, right? Then the boomers took advantage of being able to earn more and just took those calculated risks to make it happen.
It is time to defend boomers. Okay? I lose followers. I lose viewers. Every time I do this, no one wants me to defend you, right? But I will. People love saying, especially Austin, you got your house for $60,000.
No, it was less than that.
Let's go with less than that. The average equity for boomers, 2.2%. The average equity for Gen Xers, and the reason why I continue to stump for Gen X, was 4%. Gen X was caught between two bad times. They were caught between the peak of the 80s market, and then they were caught at the real estate market. So they never had a period of glory, really. Millennials caught the 4% to the quickly rising what it is now. And this is why I tell Gen Z to buy homes. You're currently sitting at 10%. 5 times the equity of boomers. So let's take Austin's theory that your house, you bought it for $60,000. You made 2% equity on that house, which means year after year, you were gaining about $1,200 to $1,500. That same house that Austin says, well, it's $400,000 now, great. That means you're making 5 to 6% equity on that house. So you're making $24,000 a year. You're making literally 20 times on your house as a Gen Zer than the boomer made on their house. But you guys always focus on the cost and not what you're making. And I think that's a large reason of Bill's point is our mindset. And this goes for millennials too. Our mindset always goes to cost, cost, cost. We never start businesses because of the cost. We never, everything costs. We focus on that. But we never focus on what it makes. Boomers were the generation who were like, we're willing to risk the money to make money in the future. And I think that's why you guys have so much money in the future now that we're here.
Yeah. And look, I see thousands of applications a year, right? And a lot of it is the hardest part is coming up with money for the down payment, in my opinion. Credit can be fixed.
Yep.
You can go through that. Income, sometimes it can go up, sometimes it can go down, but there's opportunity for people to increase their income. The money for the down payment is the most difficult thing for
Just
them.
get in a car crash.
Because we don't save
Works
it.
every
You
time.
don't save it.
Which leads me, we saved the worst for last, millennials.
Here we are.
I mean this sincerely. As a millennial,
Oh, I get 2 mics now.
I have,
I was micless and now I got 2.
I believe millennials believe themselves to be the middle child. And I'm a middle child myself, right? We feel like we were born too early or too late to experience, the glories of the 50s rat race. And we feel like we were born too late to enjoy all the modern technology that Gen Z. We feel like all the middle child, like we don't get anything. I think millennials are the luckiest and most fortunate real estate generation of all time. We walked into a market post housing attack.
Insider job.
It is what it is. We walked into a market post housing attack where, maybe our parents went through it, but we were too young to ever really kind of feel the vibrations. We knew of it. Yeah, it was a huge thing. I was in college when all that was happening, but when I was in college, I wasn't thinking about the housing market. I was getting drunk. I was wasting my student loans, like Bill said. I was that guy, right? By the time I was ready to buy a house, we had the lowest rates in decades. And more importantly, because of the housing attack, housing prices had been stunted. So we walked into low housing prices and low interest rates. That's why every millennial who bought a house 2018, 2019, and 2020, they're already up $150,000, $180,000 in equity. The average American who bought a house in 2020 is already up $180,000 4 years later. That would have taken Bill 100 years to make.
At 2%.
At 2%, right? So when I have empathy for Gen X because you walked into tragedies. I have empathy for boomers because you guys' opportunities to make a global economy were limited. If you lived in Missouri, you better find a job in Missouri, right? There was no global, I'm going to ship something from China and resell it in New York, right? And I feel bad for Gen Z because they have to deal with the consequences of our actions. Millennials are the one group I don't have any empathy for. If you're a millennial and you're not buying a house, I have no empathy for you. I don't. I think you are wasting one of the golden gifts of our lifetime. You're walking into low housing prices, you're walking into the peak of your economic earning powers, and you're walking into interest rates that do not resemble what you're making, right? You're also walking into the worst rental period in American history. So it's not like option B is any better. You know, I think we millennials see themselves as these unfortunate middle children of history. And I think we are the luckiest generation of all time. We have the knowledge of the boomers and the Gen X of how to work, how to thrive, how to sacrifice, how to save. And we also know how to turn a computer screen on, right? We know how to fix a printer. I know how to take my remote and change the television channel for my grandma. We have the best of both worlds, but I don't believe we see it that way. What do you think, Alexandra?
Well, we're definitely educated. We're overly educated. And
Yes.
that's something that we came out with is tons and tons of education from the boomers that said, hey, you got to go to college, go to college. And you had a lot of kids going to college, getting degrees that made no sense whatsoever.
Underwater basket weaving.
Yeah. And you're like, well,
I still
what does
haven't
that
found that
do?
degree. I've been looking
What
for
does
it.
that do? You know, not to mention I was watching what some of the degrees are right now. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And I don't know how you get a job with that. But anyways, not to dish on you again, Austin. Sorry.
I went to my degree is. I mean, Robert probably would have done well with my degree. It was for, digital cinematography.
That makes sense. Yeah, but there's some.
No. There's a school in New York where they get to make up their own majors,
Yeah, that
and
doesn't work. Yeah,
I'm not. No, it's
that's
real
not
bad.
cool.
I want to be a butterfly.
Intersectional gender geography.
It's like,
Right,
okay, thank you.
literally.
Please put the fries in the bag.
Butterfly dreaming.
But we had I
fries in
remember
the bag.
graduating college and I had I thought my expectation of myself that I would be like the boss by 26, 27. That was what was set up. You go to college, this sets you up differently. And I can remember I didn't get commas in my paycheck for a long time.
Yeah.
And I was a college grad, and I had a corporate job and I
Yeah.
had
Yep.
So I really like what you said. That is we as millennials really are in the best generation. I, being on the oldest side of the millennial, really do identify more with Robert's generation or boomers or things like that because I didn't have that technology. I didn't have the technology toys. They came, but they weren't anything you need. I had a cell phone, but it was just used. It was just used to in an emergency. Like I didn't need it. I didn't use it.
I got a question for the millennials here. Do you, because I call you guys the entitled generation.
Oh, we are.
Do you guys feel that your peers are, because you guys went to school and you got pretty much everything that you needed, the technology was there, like, do you feel that your peers are entitled? Like, do you feel some of the mentality is like, I went here, now I need this, If they're the complaining generation, I feel like
we're the
millennials
worst.
are like,
We're the worst.
I should have gotten that. I should have gotten this. I hear a lot of
Yeah.
millennials say that.
We
actually.
were the first. So when social media first hit, a lot of Gen Z were still too young to feel jealousy, envy, things like that. And for the older generations, you've seen your boomer dad on Facebook. They use Facebook for its intended purpose, to talk to their friends and yell about politics to other
Take a
people.
profile
their
picture
age.
this close to their face.
Yeah. They're not doing it. We were the first generation who
Get
we're
that.
like, oh, this
Gotta
is how
get that.
celebrities really live. Oh, this is how the 1% really live. I want that. I need that. And if I don't have it, my life is awful.
And I'm gonna show that that's how I live.
Yeah.
I'm gonna present that.
we were. If
projecting.
If boomers are the saving generation, we're the
We're
spending
the
generation.
squander. Squander our opportunity
Yeah,
generation.
we were the generation that would rather look rich than be rich. They even sell things to us. I actually found this out in marketing right now. There's a sales tactic, a marketing tactic called little luxuries, and they invented it for millennials, where they say millennials who believe they can't own a home or they can never live the life, they sell them little luxuries. That's why McDonald's raised the price of their burger, so that instead of seeing it as fast food, you see it as a little treat, a little luxury,
I deserve
a little
this sweet treat.
Yeah.
That's something that I can want to reference on. Mercedes did a really good job about introducing the C class, and they made it very, very affordable for millennials. And then there's like the A or I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, and that came out in the early 2000s, and it was like, because Mercedes used to be the boomer. You got it's your dad's car, it's the boomer car, and they thought, oh, let's get them in young, let's get them in their 20s, and let's make a Mercedes now affordable to people that wouldn't have been affordable when that person would have been a Honda. Let's make it a Mercedes. So I definitely agree with what you're saying is the little luxuries. Let's give them the taste and make them feel like they've, quote unquote, reached their apex of their earning potential at 25. But let's be serious, you're going to have a car loan your entire life because you're, as Bill likes to say, you're driving your house.
You're driving.
Who
your
made
house.
those marketing campaigns though? The boomers.
See, Bill's happy with me. I don't have a car loan.
Well, and actually, in this case, this is Gen X doing.
Oh, you're
Because
right. It is Gen X.
You guys rejected the idea of brands, wealth, right? You wanted a different lifestyle, a new American lifestyle, right? But because of that, it gave you insight into what people really wanted on their on their core, right?
Sure,
You
yeah.
saw it. You got to be outside looking in and being like, oh,
That's the boomer in us.
yeah, it's
that's the
boomer.
capitalist.
How
in
do
us.
exactly? How do we take advantage of these people's new addiction to living like celebrities? Right? What are these celebrities' houses? Give them little luxuries. Raise the price on common goods to make them feel more luxurious.
Do your yearly Disney trip
Do
and
your-
then
Yeah.
rent.
Experiences, travel. Give them. Don't send them to the nice parts of France. Just send them to the places everybody else goes, so they can feel like they're doing something in this overcrowded city with a million other tourists. That's what was pushed on us, and it's very successful.
Well, and
write
there's
that down.
so much. You talk about competition, you talk about advertising, you talk about competition podcasts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like you have so much time in the day. What do you watch? And then sometimes you just get distracted. Me growing up, we saw Tide commercials.
He had three things
We
to look
saw,
at.
it was 3 commercials.
How many John Wayne
in
movies came out in a
between
year?
Gilligan's Island? So it was very easy not to get caught up in all the distractions. And I think that that's where it's difficult for some of the younger generation because they have so many things to try and consider. And how can I get rich quick? And I don't want to spend the time to learn a trade or do that.
Yeah.
They get distracted.
You guys had the glory of not knowing. And I think it's something that no one wants to talk about, but wherever you lived, you knew that there was some rich guy in New York in a palace getting fed grapes, but you never had to see it. You never had to see it, right?
Yeah.
For you, it was just like a theory.
Now we see everything.
And every year, we get more and more knowledge on what it is on the other side, right? On the real good life. So when you were working towards something, you were working towards a goal. You couldn't see it, but you knew you were working towards something.
Yeah.
Each generation after you got a deeper and deeper insight into what being rich
Really
actually
is.
looks like, right? And so even though it's more attainable, like Gen Z has the best chance of getting rich because they have the
We know how to scam.
there's that. They have the most job opportunities in terms of a global economy, right? And that has increased with each generation, but they also have the most competition for getting rich because everybody has the information on how to accomplish it,
Yeah.
And even worse for Gen Z is it's in their face. You open your app and there's some guy doing something stupid with his money and you can't escape it. You can't run away. You can't give that knowledge back.
Grass is always greener too.
grass is always
Always greener.
Yeah.
I was going to say for your generation or for really our generation, it was in you, it was, Lifestyles, the Rich and Famous that came on, and you got to watch the show.
one
Cribs.
show to be
Wait, what
jealous.
show was
Cribs.
this?
MTV
I remember Cribs.
Yeah.
Well, and then it was Cribs, but Lifestyles, the Rich and Famous, that was
our one show.
Yeah. And I was
Robin?
listening. Yeah. Robin
Robin
Leach. And watching, I was listening to Holly Madison, who was Girls Next Door with Playboy Bunny and with Hefner. And she was saying, like, that show, that was an inside to Hefner's world and the bunnies. And she was saying that would have never worked today because we had social media. Same thing, the Kardashians were able to become what they were. And it was like, whoa, I want to see this because social media wasn't what it was. And so you make a really good point. It wasn't in our faces and we wanted it. We wanted to see it. Now it's like anybody could be like a Kardashian. Anybody could be like
It's
Drake.
easier to fake it, too.
Anybody
Yeah.
can show. Yeah. I know I like to walk on the beach. When I lived in San Diego on Tuesdays with my husband, we'd have a walk date. And anyways, I'd watch these cars, people would like rent cars and they'd show up at the beach with the sunset to shoot the photo and they, lay on the car and I'd be like, that's not even your car. Like I'd watch
I want to
them-
do that. Can we do
I'd
that?
watch the But you're right. That you made a really good point. It wasn't in Bill's face. It was you knew the good life of what you could imagine, but for especially you're like, wow, it's right here. Well, why can't I have it right now?
The fall of civilization was reality TV.
Yeah.
And you helped.
And you
I did
helped.
help. I was working on those shows.
And now, being the boomer that I am, right, not having all that growing
kids.
up, now I'm like, what do I watch? Which ones do I select?
Yeah.
And it gets like
You have a
like,
paralysis
it
of
gets-
choice.
Yes, it gets
But
hard.
you get to watch. I call it the alien in space theory, right? It's how I make all my decisions in life. I kind of step outside. I'm in alien space, looking at Earth from a different perspective, right? And I feel like one of the great advantages of boomers is you guys get to be aliens in space. You guys are living the life that you wanted, right? When you were a boy growing up, you wanted a family, a good house, right? These are the things you wanted. We wanted luxury cars and we wanted Lamborghinis, right? So for us, there is a pressure on ourselves of knowledge, of knowing what's out there and knowing what's possible. So even when we have a good life, even when we have, like right now, I finally have the house I wanted. I finally have the life that I couldn't imagine 8 years ago. I still feel like, okay, I got to work harder. I don't have the Lambo yet. I need to, why am I not in Paris 5 times a year, right? Because I see that it's possible. And knowing that it's possible makes me feel like a failure if I'm not going there.
I can see
Yeah,
that.
I had a big thing for me, and you guys are gonna roast me about this, but like I enjoy going to therapy. Legitimately, like I actually have like mental issues going on. But one
Just
thing
go to
that-
war.
Yeah, you're right. My body is yearning to die
Suck
on
it up,
on a
Austin.
European front.
Just suck it up and
Just
go
suck
to
it up,
war.
go to war, and then not know how to parent your child, and then your child parents me, and then all of a sudden I still have issues. But irregardless, though, one thing that I realize is that like I don't feel content working like an office job. I want to be significant, maybe not necessarily famous, but I want to be significant, and that's kind of put me where I'm at today. Those pressures of I want to have a show, or I want to be a producer for shows. I want to be like I almost want to be remembered as somebody because
you
of the fact that I
also
see
said-
this all over the place.
You also
You want,
said
you want a legacy.
Yeah,
you also said home ownership is in that goal.
It is.
As that like we've had some off camera conversation. I'm like, so why do you want to buy a home? And you said this is the next step for me to be an adult and provide for
Yeah.
my family is home ownership.
Yeah.
Right.
And Austin, you're on your way. I mean, and sometimes it's just it takes time.
It does, and that's
you
and that's something
can't
I have to battle
expect
with.
it to happen overnight. It just
I'm
doesn't happen
curious to
overnight.
see how many Gen Z people actually want to own homes. Like how many? Like do you have conversations around your peers?
I
about
have
home
one.
ownership?
We know one. I have one Gen Z friend that owns a home. I mean,
56% of people under the age of 30 said they would rather rent an apartment than own a home because of the work and maintenance that goes and the responsibility.
I think it's the same thing as like that's why I'm not buying a new car and I'm keeping my older car because I've learned how to work on my car and I now know that it's cheaper. Let's just say I have to spend $1,200 a year in maintenance on my car. That's still cheaper than like the lowest monthly payment on a new car.
Yeah.
And then even then, stuff still goes wrong and you still have to pay for it. But with An apartment though, and I think I've been spoiled by being with you guys so much and learning all of this, and I've had an apartment before, is okay, you lock in your rate for 12 months, you got to renegotiate that rate. If I buy a mortgage right now, I don't have to renegotiate, as long as I get like a fixed rate mortgage, I don't have to renegotiate that for 30 years. And like it stays what it is. I don't have to worry about somebody coming in and being like, we're actually, your house isn't, if you have an HOA, kind of, but you have too many pets, or we don't like the wallpaper in here, kind of thing. Like, no, I can do what I want. It's my property, and maybe I am just a guy at a time.
You are, but I think, and not think, I've been teaching real estate classes for 4 years now, and I can say this with the utmost confidence. Gen Z is the people that take to the education the strongest.
Yeah, I
They're the
use
ones-
TikTok to learn. I learn about financial literacy. I learn about like, okay, I yes, I doom scroll a lot on TikTok. It's a problem. I'll be the first to admit that. But I also use TikTok. A lot of the people that I follow are because I learned something from them, not because they're just entertaining.
Yeah.
Like, there's like, I want to learn how to cook better because spending money on food is expensive.
Yeah.
To eat out, I want to learn how to cook better. Let me see these people that do. And maybe I'm still trying to grow my palate to be like, I want more vegetables. I want more this and that. But like, how do I learn to cook better with cheaper foods and stuff like that? Or like, there's a guy that I follow that teaches like budgeting. How do I budget better? How do I set myself up monthly for better success? But I feel like a lot of Gen Z though is not like that.
This is where we disagree. And
Okay.
you and I don't disagree often, honestly.
No.
Out of everybody here, you and I
Nope.
are often the most agreement with a lot of things, weird as that may be,
Yep.
right? But where I disagree is I think Gen Z has been searching for a counterculture forever. Gen X had a counterculture. They were like, F you yuppies, I'm going to escape. I'm going to do all the things you guys told me were wrong or the wrong thing to do. I'm going to jump into that, right?
Right.
Millennials kind of killed the counterculture, where we just kind of went along with what everybody else was doing. And
Yeah.
if everybody says this is the right thing to do, then we were just like, okay, that's the right thing to do, right?
I feel like we do push back a lot more.
You guys are the counterculture. So
Yeah.
if everybody's trying not to learn, you guys are out there trying to learn. If everybody's doing one thing, and that's why I feel so confident about teaching these classes, because I do feel like there's a yearning from your generation to learn, to do things differently than their peers. I think that's why, as I said earlier, Gen Z under the age of 26 actually have a higher level of home ownership than millennials, boomers, and Gen X. I think you guys genuinely want to go back to a more simple lifestyle as a counterculture reaction.
Yeah, and I think it's because we've been so like I grew up having TV and basically the internet every step of the way.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, it's just like it's overwhelming, and it's sometimes you're like, I found myself picking up, and like this is probably not a thing that I shouldn't have kept doing, but like reading more instead of like trying to go watch TV or something. Is like I want to read more because it allows my brain to kind of shut off and not be so constantly overwhelmed with information constantly from my phone or from my computer or TV or something like that. But I think maybe that's the reason why is like we're just so fed up of like we're always being sold to. That's the thing is like we're always constantly being sold to by, and I'm guilty of this too, is like an influencer. I have to pay my bills, so I'm always trying to help. Like if a brand deal comes through, sponsor that. But then also brands are coming to us.
Yeah.
And TikTok is like every other scroll is an ad.
Yeah.
Facebook, there's ads everywhere. YouTube, there's ads everywhere.
Yeah. I never saw any of that. So you see everything. You guys, there's so much transparency in all types of businesses, particularly the ones online, the real estate, buy real estate. And so you know that there's a lot of opportunity. So
Right.
you want to take advantage of the opportunity before it passes you by.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like with social media is we're always feeling like it's passing me by no matter what. Like I have no matter what I do, it's going to pass me by. And that's it. And necessarily, but to also go against like kind of like what Brandon was saying with boomers, you guys didn't have that. You didn't have as much competition. Granted, not as much opportunity. I'll definitely agree on that. But also look at like, let's just keep it something like here, like podcast studios. I came from another studio, and at that time there were several studios, and now there's even more studios.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, thankful we have business. We're doing well because we're working hard and bringing in clients. But at the same time, it's always like that pressure of like,
More.
I gotta keep going.
Yeah.
Like
So-
Robert and I were talking today. We're like, can we do 2 more clients?
Yeah, but-
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it.
So I'm going to segue into home ownership and
Right.
ask the realtor here and the lender. who do you see is buying more homes right now? Just
Right now,
your
we're
own-
at peak,
in
we're at,
Vegas
we're at
market.
peak millennial.
really.
We are at peak because again, millennials walked into what I'm seeing right now is millennials who bought houses 2018, 2019, 2020 made the stupidest amounts of equity and are now selling their homes, moving to Vegas, and not only are they buying bigger homes, but now they're having money in the bank to utilize for other things. That's my number one buyer right now.
Move up buyers.
Is the millennial who is moving up in the world, or the millennial who, after having their rent raised for the 11th time, has finally grown sick of it. But it's millennials. They're dominating the market.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's families, growth of a family. There's a lot of stuff going on with that.
Yeah, millennials are finally starting to have kids.
Yeah.
Finally, after after all these years, we're finally starting to have kids. We're finally starting to want different things. So it is very heavily dominated.
I think that regardless of any generation, like the coastal cities are tough to buy homes right now. Like they're very expensive. All those markets in New York,
Yeah.
California.
I think it's crazy.
Portland.
I mean, I lived on the coast, and I moved here because it was just getting outrageous.
It makes people uncomfortable to talk about this, but I think there should be a podcast that makes people a little uncomfortable. Okay,
How do I turn that on?
where do you think when millions of people move to America each year, do you think they want to live in Iowa? You think they want to move to Mississippi? You think someone comes from Colombia, someone comes from another country, and they're like, man, Des Moines, Iowa, I've been dreaming about this since I was a kid.
True. LA.
They want LA. They
I
want
will
New York.
say though, there is a big resurgence and like people wanting to homestead. Like that's something that I'm seeing a lot more. People wanting
Those
to
aren't
move.
immigrants.
That's not immigrants. Immigrants
No.
want to come here. They want the American dream. They want to
Right.
make money. They want their kids in good schools. They want to move up. They want to live
Because of
in the
social
big
media, they're
cities.
seeing
100%.
what is possible, but they
And-
want that.
And as we said earlier, these same immigrants are willing to outwork you. They're willing to outwork you. They're willing to do things that you guys. Robert will work a 16-hour day, bro. You're
16? That's nothing.
You're not gonna outwork Robert, right? And so everyone's trying to move to these same coastal cities and being like, why are the prices going up? Well,
Yeah.
because everyone's trying to move there.
So what is your advice for millennials trying to buy right now? Like,
Do whatever. Stop telling yourself, especially people in California, stop telling yourself that your job pays you enough money. If it doesn't pay you enough money to own a house, move somewhere that does.
well, I have millennial friends that make close to 200,000 and they still can't buy a house in California.
California. Move
It's California.
Move
Yeah.
to move to
Right.
Vegas. Move to Vegas.
Yeah.
Move to Montana. Move somewhere where there's nothing stopping you from moving. If you move away from your home for 4 to 5 years, gain some equity, there's nothing stopping you from moving back. But the sooner you start, as boomers have proven to you guys, the sooner you start, the better it is for your future.
I think a big problem is we want our cake and we want to eat it too. Like I want to be able to like I would like to live, maybe not because I know how bad it is, but like Vegas, like the summers here are awful. Like I've seen a lot of people move here for the first summer and then they're like, why did I move here? And then they like, I get it. Like I have family in California that has never left California. They've struggled with home ownership. I mean, they all own homes, but they, had to have like, they make probably almost half a mil combined.
Not by the beach.
Not by the beach.
So what's
one
the
of them,
point?
one of
Yeah.
them does. Right. No, but I mean, like,
Well, like 5 miles from the beach or like 25 miles.
which
Like,
is,
you know
which
what
is
I
an
mean?
hour and a half
Like,
drive in California.
Yeah, like
yeah, no,
it's a big
right, but
you
the
know.
weather is nicer
yeah.
there. I mean, that's the only thing is like my mom, for example, moved
Yeah,
all
but hold
over-
on. You got to be. I think you said it first.
Right.
It's like having your cake and eating it too. And then
Right.
this is the boomer in me. Like the boomers had less saturation in anything they had. Like with the real estate market, with job opportunities. Like there wasn't overpopulation.
Sure.
So like you can't expect to live in an overpopulated city
And behave.
and pay less prices
You know
because
what?
Right.
everybody
And-
like.
And the boomers have an amazing advantage in California because they bought up all the
Everything.
properties,
Everything.
and that's where everybody wants to live.
Yep.
Yeah.
And why would they move? And then the real estate taxes,
Profits.
which
Profits?
I
That's because
don't know
those
what it is.
cultural
But it's
cosplaying hippies
completely-
kept telling everybody to move to
Yes.
California.
Well, it's different
the
now,
leaves
so
are
they don't
brown.
they're not paying the real estate tax that people are paying.
Yeah.
So I'm working with a client right now, nurse, makes well over 100, and she was looking in California, and she's like, well, I just can't find anything that I want. She's moving to Vegas. Her income is going to be reduced.
Yep.
And she's going to be making, or she's going to be able to buy like probably at least 2/3 of the house, a much bigger house than she would.
I'm going to end this in a way that's genuine and honest.
No, it's like 2 hours.
I know because it's
so good.
It's important, man. Like what's most important is everybody's seeing that different generations can agree, disagree. But the one thing that we can go statistics, we can go personal experience, trying to buy a house, having owned multiple homes, bought his first house, trying to buy a house, right? One thing we can all share with you guys is that no matter what generation you're in, owning a home is still and always will be the American dream. That's the nice Brandon in me.
Move out of your oversaturated market. That's me. Get out of there.
Get rid of your creature comforts. You cannot, and this is why me and Austin, this is my dog right here, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. You want to live a comfortable ass life? That's fine. You're going to live it in a rental. And you're going to rent until you die because you would rather be comfortable than be financially successful. And that's fine. That's fine. Just quit bitching about it. Quit being such a millennial. Quit being such a whiny little bitch. If you want the comforts, if you want the travel, if you want the experiences, that's fine. Die in your apartment with your experiences. But if you want a home, you're going to have to take about 10 gigantic steps back, give up your cake, and worry about eating it in the future. So, what do you guys got? Any final thoughts from our Gen X?
I think if you guys like the content, let us know. We want to see. We're experimenting with the format, but tell us in the comments what you guys want to know about, and if you like the series, and we'll do more of it. Basically, yeah.
My final thought is educate yourself, understand, get a game plan, and work towards it. If you really want to buy a house, understand where you're at right now.
Yeah.
My final thought is every generation has its pros, has its cons, has its situations, has things been thrown at you, and a lot of them are things that you can't control. So don't let that hold you back. We all place our own handicaps on ourselves, and most of the time, 99% of the time, it's a handicap that you created on your own.
I'm going to be a Gen Zer, and if you haven't commented because you hate me yet, now you will. Houses are still too goddamn expensive.
And finally,
Well, everything's expensive.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what generation,
Yeah.
like, shit's expensive now.
as a millennial, don't let them lie to you. I just bought my first home, and there is nothing more satisfying than walking around butt naked, eating Doritos, knowing that no one can kick you out of your shit, knowing that no one can take this from you. All the experiences are great, but there's no better experience than that, than having the freedom of knowing that you own something and no one can take it from you. So thank you guys for joining in. Thank you, everybody, for doing all this. I love the round table theory. I don't care whether these people like it or not. We're going to do more of these because I love hearing various opinions across generations about different things, different concepts. So thank you, guys. Leave a comment below. Leave your feedback below. If you're a Gen X and you think all of us are a bunch of whiny bitches, let us know. If you're a boomer and you have found out how YouTube works, leave us a comment below or have your grandkids do it for you. If you're a millennial and you want to cry about how... leave a comment below. I'll listen to your tears. And if you're a Gen Zer who think all of us are a bunch of boomers, that's okay, dude. You guys are going to die in your apartments. It's fine.
Share it, like it. They know how to do everything. Share it, like
Yeah,
it.
y'all know how to like and share and all that stuff, man. I'm Brandon from Vegas. And as always, come and be my neighbor. Peace, 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 peace. My editors hate this. This is annoying.
I'm the editor.